Hey, good morning, CCA Intermediate Algebra students. So today's features of quadratic functions. Not the hardest in the world, but takes a little thought here and there. So I thought I'd run you through the three different types of examples. You will notice when you do this one today, sometimes they'll give it to you in standard form. Sometimes they will give it to you in factored form or zero property product form. And then sometimes they'll give it to you in vertex form. So at first glance, you might think that the quadratic form would be the hardest because it's the hardest to get your intercepts and it's hardest to get your vertex form. You have to kind of manipulate it both ways to do that. However, in my opinion, it's the easiest because you know where your starting point is. You just have to factor it, and then you just got to turn it into vertex form to actually get the answer. So let me kind of explain to you. So if we were to take this and factor that, some of you can see what are two numbers that multiply to positive 3 but add up to 4. Some of you who can't still can do the diamonds and rectangles if you need to. But if you do that, you would know that, I'm just going to move these little square things up here. Our factored form of this one would be t plus 1 and t plus 3. It's very easy to do your zero property product from there because then t would equal negative 1 for this one and t would equal negative 3 for this one. So you can tell from which is our smaller t, well, negative 3 is smaller, negative 1 is larger, so that becomes easy from there. It's easy to get these answers right here from your factored form. Then, to get this into vertex form, so the vertex of the parabola. So if we take this, remember vertex form is where we take this number, we shift it off to the side. We just did this yesterday. And then you just simply find the perfect square of this. So our factored form of this one, move this up here now. All right, our vertex form here is going to be t plus 2, which is half of this, and it's right there. And remember, if I take half of this 4, half of that squared would be positive 4, so the perfect square form of this would be t squared plus 4t plus 4. Well, if I add 4 to here, to keep the equation the same, I need to then subtract 4 from this. And positive 3 minus 4 is negative 1. So the vertex form, once you get into vertex form, it's easy to find your vertex. It's the opposite of this number, so negative 2, and this number is your y on the outside. So negative 2, negative 1. So fairly simple to find it if it is in quadratic form to start with. Now, if we start off, for example, 2, and we start off in factored form like this, pretty simple right there. Okay, we'll move that up there. It's already given you basically your zero. It's easy to find your zero property product or find your smallest and largest here. You know it's going to be positive 2 from this one, and you know it's going to be positive 15 from that one. So the smaller is 2, the larger is 15, so that's pretty simple. However, in order to get it back to vertex form, you first have to take and multiply. I would ignore, now you really can't ignore the negative. Yeah, you can ignore the negative. Yes, you can. Ignore the negative and just use a generic rectangle, multiply these back together. That would give at least this portion of it to you and back into a quadratic form like this. Then from there, convert it into vertex form. When you do that, you would get, excuse me, you would get negative, which is the negative still from the outside, t minus 8.5, which 8.5 you might notice is halfway between these 2 points. So that's another way of finding it. You just add those, divide by 2, and you get this number here. And then you'd have to put this through, you have to figure it out. But you'd get 42.25. Two ways of doing that. You either A, put it into this form and then you solve for the vertex form, which you all know how to do. Or B, once you know what this point is, because it's halfway between those 2 points, you plug this number into this equation right here and solve for it. So don't care which way you do. If you already feel more comfortable putting in vertex form, do it. Go to quadratic form first, then put it into vertex form, and then from there it's easy to get your vertex, which is the opposite of this, positive 8.5, and then negative 42.5. So, third form. you'll notice they already gave you the vertex form on this one. So actually, finding the vertex is super easy from this one, so I'll start there. They already gave you vertex form, so you know it's going to be the opposite of this, or -1 and -20.25. So that's quite simple right there. But then, in order to get it back to factored form, this one, you need to first use a generic rectangle to multiply t plus 1 times t plus 1. Okay, so you're going to get t squared plus 2t plus 1. Then you're going to take that -20.25 and add it to the 1. So you're going to have -19.25. Now, you could factor it with a decimal, but I'm going to tell you, factoring decimals is not easy. So what I do, when I would have t squared plus 2t plus minus 19.25, I would multiply everything by 4, because 0.25, if I multiply a 0.25 times 4, I will get rid of all the decimals at that point. So I kind of take the smallest number I can to multiply it, which at that point, when you do this, kind of a reference point if you're trying to do this one, you would get 4t squared plus 8t minus 77. Well, from there, that's probably too hard to do in your head. So from there, you'd want to use diamonds and rectangles. And when you use your diamonds and rectangles, you'd get back to your factored form, which would be 2x plus 11 and 2x minus 7. From here, you can get your zero property product, so -5.5 for this one, and use zero property product and get +3.5 for this one. So this obviously becomes your smaller t value, and this becomes your larger t value. Hey, again, I'm available 9 to 11, and again 1 to 3 every day, so please don't hesitate to reach out for help. See ya.